Singapore is one of the most praised cities in the world. They build impressive skyscrapers and grow cyborg trees here, but can't make proper bike lanes. They have a great economy and high salaries, but also what can be called an exploitation of migrants. You can have a great career here, but you can't say anything bad about the government. Today, we'll find out if the good of Singapore outweighs its bad. We'll begin our tour of the fabulous Singapore with its fabulous airport. Singapore Airport is often ranked as the best airport in the world. This year it was named best by Skytrax for the 12th or 13th time. And it really is good. In comparison with other airports, there are a lot of additional entertainments here. What we normally see in airports: shops, food courts, maybe an interesting design if we're lucky. But at Changi there are parks, there is a butterfly garden, slides for kids, all sorts of entertainments. There is a rainforest with the world's highest waterfall. So many entertainments, not related to shopping and restaurants. The airport on its own is a tourist attraction. So look guys, you arrive here. This is the arrivals hall. You take your suitcase and you enter this world, a real jungle with a waterfall. These people over here, they've just arrived in Singapore. With their carts, with their luggage. Look, they're tired after the flight and they're looking. They're looking at this waterfall. It's amazing. This is the tallest indoor waterfall in the world. It is 40 meters high. They use rainwater from the roof, and then it circulates here. So it's a waterfall with rainwater. And the system is quite complicated, because the architects and designers had a difficult task: to avoid excessive humidity when water falls from such a height. Since the waterfall is located indoors, there are a lot of drops around the waterfall. Also, to avoid too much noise that would distract people in the shopping area, they came up with an acrylic funnel where the water falls. So there are practically no splashes, fumes or unnecessary noise. And here's an interesting fact. Next to this waterfall, there is a train that runs between the terminals. And there are passengers on this train, those who are transferring here, who have already passed all the controls. And the people at the mall can see these passengers who are just about to fly somewhere as they are passing by this waterfall. By the way, the train reduces its speed on purpose to let people enjoy the view. People are looking at this wonderful waterfall. And these are pipes that bring the water to this glass dome. And then this water falls down from a height of 40 meters, right into a special giant acrylic funnel. By the way, after the sunset there's a special show here. When it gets dark, they turn on stunning lighting. Look at the impressive green space in this mall. It's not just a mall, it's a jungle. This miracle was designed by Moshe Safdie, an American-Israeli architect who you may know for probably the most famous hotel in Singapore, Marina Bay Sands. It's a hotel that consists of 3 towers connected by a gondola-shaped swimming pool. He also built the Jewel Airport and became twice as famous in Singapore. The most iconic buildings were designed by him, a great architect. You can also grab a coffee here. Arabica is a good coffee chain. If you have a long layover in Singapore Airport, don't hesitate to go out. Leave your luggage in the storage room and go to admire this miracle they have created here. The first attraction it is the glass bridge. The bridge is really made of glass. You can see everything that happens below. On the upper level, there are several attractions, all paid. You have to buy tickets. Tickets are not cheap. For example, crossing the glass bridge costs almost $10 per adult. Well, the bridge is quite short. And the view is not that good, because you can only see the overpass. By the way, the park is the most affordable attraction here. For only $8 you can enter it. Relax here, breathe the fresh, humid air, and look at the animal figures. Here, for example, are monkeys. It's a scam. The flowers are plastic. One might think they're real, but they are not. They've skimped on the peacock, but all the other plants here are real. Now, this is a slide, which requires a separate ticket. This must be where kids come from. And there are nets there. Very cool. There are two types of nets here. One is for climbing, the green one, and one for walking. We are going to explore it now. The walking net is really cool. You can take nice pictures here. And over there they have some labyrinths to climb on. It looks cooler actually, but it's for kids. People are running in these net tubes, like hamsters. You can see several floors down. If you are afraid of heights, you can train your nerves here. In short, a pure pleasure. I have been to many airports, but I haven't seen such an incredible one as in Singapore. It's unbelievable. In this sense, Singapore is great. What they are doing in terms of Instagram spots, new attractions, it can only be compared with what the Arabs are doing in Dubai. Because nowhere else in the world you can find so many miracles in one place, and everybody's talking about them. Taking pictures, everybody's loving them. Done with the airport. Now let's go to the city. We'll start with its main symbol. Look how many people are here. Look, everyone is taking photos, everyone. But why? Because we are at the main tourist spot of Singapore. This simple little statue is actually the symbol of Singapore. It's called Merlion, which is a sea lion, but not like a seal. It is a lion with a body of fish and head of a lion. In fact, the fish symbolizes that Singapore is a maritime city. And the lion symbolizes fearlessness, strength, courage. All of these qualities describe Singapore. It is the symbol of the city. Tourists love taking pictures with it. And you can find it everywhere, on postcards, on bills. Not exactly this one, but you can still see the lion's head here. The lion is spitting out a stream of water, and everyone is taking pictures of it. From here you can also see the main tourist attractions of the city. Here we have the concert hall in the shape of a durian. Here is the Ferris wheel. And here we have the Marina Bay Sands Hotel with a giant pool on the roof. And here we have a sea lion. And of course, a lot of tourists. Everyone is taking photos. It actually looks like a mermaid in a carnival costume of a lion. There is one more lion here. Very, very pretty. It's very cute too, but tourists don't seem to care. Their full attention is on the big one. They put it here on purpose, even planted some flowers around. They thought everyone would take pictures here. Here you can buy ice cream for 10 times the price. Ice cream shaped as a Merlion. Singapore's modern history began in the 19th century, when the British Stamford Raffles realized the importance of this bay, and the British heritage is not forgotten here. For example, this is the most famous hotel in the city, named after the British Stamford Raffles, the founder of modern Singapore. The hotel was built in a colonial style, and Asians were not allowed to enter it until the 1930s. Several famous people lived here. For example, Rudyard Kipling, the creator of Mowgli. Japanese writer Ryu Murakami wrote a book about the Raffles Hotel, which later became a movie. So this is a legendary place. By the way, I forgot to mention an interesting point. So in the past, they didn't let Asians in the hotel. It was literally a form of racism. Only whites could enter, Asians no. Now they don't let white people in either. For example, they didn't let me inside. Well, not because of the color of my skin, but because I didn't have a room booked here. Since the hotel is historic, it attracts a lot of tourists. They would wander around halls, take photos, sit in the armchairs, and the guests who paid a lot for their rooms would get angry. So the hotel management decided to ban entrance for those who didn't live there. Another way to enter Raffles is to go to their lobby bar. I am in a truly iconic place now. It is the long bar of the Raffles Hotel. The main cocktail of this country was invented here, the Singapore Sling. It looks like this, made with cherry brandy, gin, and many other ingredients. They say that the original recipe, invented here in the beginning of the last century, was lost in the 1930s, and the local waiters recreated it from memory. It turned out how it turned out. That's what they serve here. Singapore Sling. It's delicious, it's sweet, and it costs 37 Singapore dollars without tip or tax. Probably the most expensive cocktail I ever had. The cocktail is tasty, but I can't say it is exceptionally good. What is also interesting here is that they have a bag of peanuts on every table. The peanuts go as a snack. So you take a peanut, you eat it, and you throw the shells on the ground. It's like a reference to a local tradition, because people used to drink here, eat peanuts and throw shells on the ground. Why? Because it's a bar. The bar floor is always dirty. And since you couldn't mop it all the time, they simply swiped away the shells that absorbed the beer, the spilled alcohol and other garbage that was on the ground. It is very similar to how they cleaned the Moscow subway before they started using special machines. They would throw wet sawdust on the platforms and then swipe it away, when it's still wet, along with dust and garbage. Because this sawdust absorbed all the dirt. The same thing happened here. And to this day, this tradition is alive, although today, floor cleaning products have advanced a lot. It is a nice tradition. At least you have something fun to do while drinking a $40 cocktail. They're trying to make the most of their Singapore Sling. So you can even buy a gift set, 3 cocktail bottles, a glass, and most importantly, a bag of peanuts. All packed in a pretty gift box, for you to have cocktails at home. Since the bar is a very tourist place, there is a whole line to have a cocktail here. Here you can read about the history of this cocktail, see some old photos of this bar. I wonder if Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles know that this hotel would sell cocktails for $45. Singapore has a parks department that is developing the idea of a city in a garden. It is about creating the first metropolis where nature and civilization meet to form a new reality in a public space of another quality. Gardens by the Bay is one of the stages of implementing this idea. Designers of the project, including the famous British company Wilkinson Eyre, decided to work around a topic that is always relevant: ecology. The most popular element of the gardens by the bay are the super trees. There are 18 of them here. Some are covered with solar panels, which produce energy. Others are connected by greenhouses and serve for air exchange. Furthermore, there are creeping plants on these trees. They are practically vertical gardens. The height of these cyborg trees is from 25 to 50 meters. On top of the trees, there are solar panels. The energy accumulated during the day is used to illuminate the park in the evening. These trees are also used to collect rainwater, and in some places, there are bridges where you can walk. Super trees are made up of almost 163,000 plants of 200 species. In fact, they planted these climbing plants hoping that they will curl up and form a crown. Almost 10 years has passed, but no crown so far. The bushes grow slowly, so for now, people must enjoy the metal structure. The park was inaugurated in Singapore in 2012. Before, there was ocean here, but Singapore constantly claims new lands from the sea. Now it is one of the main attractions. High officials are brought here when they visit Singapore. The park has turned out to be truly amazing. Here are some curious discoveries. They say that trees and plants help to reduce air pollution. It is not entirely true. I'll probably say something outrageous, but trees in a city do not filter the air and do not eliminate any pollution. On the contrary, trees often hinder ventilation, and actually a lot of dust is accumulated on the leaves. In this sense, if we look only at cleanliness of the air, trees don't bring that many benefits. But the main advantage of trees, especially in Singapore, is that they make shadow. In such a hot climate, they are great at cooling the asphalt and sidewalks, creating space for pleasant walks. Some think that if they put a lot of geraniums on the windowsill, they will have fresher air in their apartment. I don't want to upset you, but it doesn't work like this. The only use of plants and pots, except for aesthetics, is that they humidify the air. You can also come to this park after sunset. Firstly, it is not that hot, and secondly, all these trees are beautifully lit. People come here to admire this miracle of Singapore's architecture. Let's talk a bit about Singapore's architecture. This is a separate topic, because this city has a very humid climate, and the trees grow here so easily. Yes, you have to plant them, yes, you have to take care of them. But this is not Dubai. It is not an arid place where it takes many years and effort to grow trees. Here, there are rainforests, so there is a lot of vegetation. And the vegetation is not only on the ground, not only in the parks. There is a vegetation in the facades, on the roofs. The city is very green, and there are many projects with vertical vegetation. Whenever they can, local architects try to make terraces and balconies with trees. There are many buildings whose walls are covered with climbing plants, making them green. Behind me is the Park Royal Hotel, and look at the amount of vegetation there. Look at the real jungles in these terraces. It is incredible. It's very cool. When you walk around and look at this architecture, you realize that this is the future. Humans once came out of the cave, came out of the woods, and now they're returning back to the jungle. This jungle is no longer a stone jungle, it's a real jungle, green, man-made. Another interesting thing, as I'm standing here, I can see a robot lawnmower going through the grass. And this is a municipal park. It's not a private area, it's an ordinary lawn in the city, and the robot works here since morning. This is the new Marriott building, and there are also gardens everywhere. Trees, balconies, flowers. In general, no decent building in Singapore can be built without trees. Everything has to be green. Walking in Singapore is so comfortable, not only thanks to the trees. We are going to see a very interesting bridge now. When they make bridges for both cars and pedestrians, it is usually very uncomfortable for pedestrians because people have to walk along the flow of rushing cars. But Singaporeans have put a divider made of flowers to fix this. So this is the road, a noisy 4-lane highway. And here are tall flower beds. When you walk by it, you don't see any cars. It's a pleasure to walk over a bridge like this. Of course, it is easier to do it here than in other cities, because the climate is favorable. Plants don't need any additional care. Anyway, it is a great solution. Instead of flowers, we could plant regular bushes that grow well in our climate. Look, there's a bus coming, but we will barely see it. It is a double-decker bus. The bushes protect us. Everything in Singapore is very well organized, sometimes too organized. You know, there is too much order in Singapore. For example, it's obvious that you shouldn't walk in these bushes, but they still have this green rope here. I don't know why they do it. It just looks bad. And there are cameras everywhere, on every lamppost, in every business center. Look, a camera here, another camera there. They're watching you to make sure you don't do things that are prohibited. And almost everything is prohibited here. What a weird thing. Guys, I think it's a Robocop. I mean, it is just standing here, doing nothing. It's got cameras, and it's right in the middle of a busy street. But why? Because there are enough cameras without this robot. Singaporeans like following the rules. Singapore is famous for its strict fines and penalties. You'll be surprised to know the fine even for a minor violation. If you throw a piece of gum or a cigarette butt in the street, you will lose $500. Smoking in the wrong place will set you back 1,000 Singapore dollars. Locals say Singapore is a fine city, which can mean that it's a good city, but also that it's a city of fines. In Singapore, you can be fined for carrying a durian in the subway, eating or chewing a gum in a public place, lighting fireworks, and jaywalking. Corporal punishment, caning, applies to 30 types of crimes in Singapore, like attempted murder, armed robbery, violation of the terms of stay, and vandalism. The cane that they use is approximately 1 meter 20 centimeters long and 30 millimeters thick. It is made of rattan. They tie a person to a huge iron frame and beat his bare buttocks with a cane. There was a case in Singapore in 1994 when an American teenager, Michael Fay, was caned for vandalism. Singapore ignored the pleas for clemency of US President Bill Clinton. You should also know that the criminal law of Singapore in general is not on the defendant's side. A confession can be considered grounds for death sentence. Pre-trial familiarization visits do not exist here, and the defense doesn't know until the trial what the defendant said during police interrogations. What is more, a circumstantial evidence may be enough for a death penalty. Singapore is one of the leading countries by death penalties per capita, and also by law obedience, because with such punishments you don't want to commit a crime. So, are you scared by the local fines? No? Then let's continue our tour. Now we'll check out the Marina One complex. There are apartments, offices, cafes, shops. It has everything. And most importantly, it has a beautifully landscaped courtyard. What is interesting is that the building looks square from the outside, and you would never imagine the design inside is so sophisticated. Just look, it's a real jungle down there. These incredible bridges where you can walk and the inner side of the building is kind of wavy and it becomes narrow at the bottom. There's also a waterfall here. These towers are residential and these ones are offices. All the plans here are real. Now let's explore other floors with their cafes, recreation areas, and a huge garden downstairs. This is an entrance to the house, but you need to know somebody who lives here, otherwise the guards won't let you in. And here you should be able to see people swimming, because it's a pool up here. Look how dense the vegetation is here, like a real jungle. It is literally impenetrable. They planted trees that were already mature. There is automatic irrigation here, plus the climate. As a result, everything grows super fast. And now we have this beautiful green patio down here. Now let's take a look at one of the upscale neighborhoods. But how to enter? There are all these automatic gates. Do you think we can walk inside? Yes. Because your guard will let us in, right? Exactly. Neighbors trust each other here. Some don't even lock front doors. I see. So this must be your yard. How much does an apartment in this area cost? An apartment? Several millions. Oh yeah? Yes. And how much is the rent one? The rent here probably starts from $5,000 US. A lot of Chinese are coming here from Hong Kong. And the rent is probably up to 7,000. Is that with all the bills, or you should also add bills? You should add bills. In Singapore, not only residential buildings are so pretty, some stores here are just as sophisticated. For example, this is an Apple store. You're still wondering why Apple products cost so much. That's because they have to build these cool stores. The store is located in a crystal ball. It's like a reference to the main store on 5th Avenue in New York with a giant glass cube. The cube is just an entrance, though and the store itself is under the ground. They also say here that they love the planet. Today, you can't sell nothing without mentioning it. It's a lie. If they love the planet, they wouldn't make so many different types of connectors on their products. They would let people use the accessories more responsibly. A glass elevator that will bring you down to the underground floor. Wow! Besides the elevator, there are also escalators. As always with Apple, everything is luxury. The transportation and traffic system in Singapore deserves special mention. Given the lack of space and population density, you'd expect Singapore to be full of traffic jams. But no, the road traffic here is inferior to that of Seoul or Dhaka, which I also showed you recently. It's because Singapore has very strict rules for motorists and a well-organized transport system. There are not only toll roads and paid parking, but also expensive licenses to have a private car. All these tolls, licenses, and the traffic management system in general are designed to reduce the number of motorists and encourage them to use public transport. When Singapore became a rich country, locals rushed to get private cars. Eventually in the 90s, a licensing system for car ownership was introduced here. Now, the cost of a license is around the price of a car, before taxes. And in the case of cars worth more than $50,000, the license costs more than the car itself. There are also road taxes, taxes on different types of fuel, which depends on the weight of the car, fees to enter the city center, paid parkings, and so on and so forth. So owning a car in Singapore is very expensive, while using a public transport is really easy. Speaking of public transportation, for buses not to get in traffic jams, there are special road junctions and dedicated lanes. And behind my back, you can see an REP arch, which charges cars for passing. So basically, each car has a sensor. There are also sensors on the road. And when you pass, you are charged a fee. So these interactive gates set the cost of driving depending on the traffic situation. Right now, they're off because there is little traffic. But usually you can see the price of passing under the gate on this screen. Speaking of rules, look at this man. He's jaywalking. No, buddy, you can't cross here. Your daughter's watching. There's another man crossing in the wrong place. What's happening here? What are they doing? Come on, there is an underground passage. Fines in this country are huge, guys. No, daughter, don't look there. We are going to cross here now. Speaking of surveillance cameras, there's a palm tree made of these cameras here. 8 cameras on one pole. I wonder what are they surveilling? All 8 of them. When you talk to someone about the public transport in Singapore, people will tell you that public transport here is great. There are new metro lines appearing, there are double-decker buses. And it really would be great if not for one thing, the design of the stops. They're all trivial and boring. Obviously they were made following some standards, but the standards of the 90s. The designers didn't think much here. They've built these primitive, standardized pavilions. It looks like a shopping mall in a small provincial town in Russia. I just think with all its money, Singapore could hire better architects to design the stops, so they could fit the city more, you know. In many cities, subway stations become architectural landmarks. Take for example the Moscow metro, where people take guided tours of the stations. Another, more recent, example would be the Stockholm metro, where every station is unique. Or take Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, where they invited famous architects to design their stations. In general, different cities try to create new wonders and new points of attraction, and Singapore, with its opportunities, with its money, is doing this crap. Although locals may see it as something nice, I actually don't find it attractive at all. Some waves? I don't know. I mean, they could build something nice. Yeah, they could use a good designer here. Once again, they put their cameras everywhere. Here's a pole with a camera. Okay, you want to put cameras. But at least make them look good. Look how they do it in Paris. In Paris, all the street furniture, poles, bins and so on have the same design. It looks incredibly elegant and cool. All the bus stops, trash cans and lanterns match each other. Or look at Great Britain, where their phone booths have become a symbol of the city. I mean, all these objects and were designed by people who know their stuff. And in Singapore, it looks very sad. For example, we are walking through the center. And look at this traffic light. It's like we're in, I don't know, American countryside. I mean, it's just a primitive pole with a primitive sign. It could have been done in a beautiful way, because in terms of architecture, there are many cool buildings here, mostly residential. But the design of public infrastructure is neglected here. For some reason, the city administration doesn't really care about it. To properly estimate the transportation system in Singapore, we should also look at transport hubs. They've got an interesting navigation here. They not only use colors, but also images. The choice of images is a bit strange, to be honest. A net, some inflatable balls, a shuttlecock. This is a bus station. There are lines for each bus, so people can line up to board. Frankly speaking, in terms of design, everything is pretty simple. I'm talking about the architecture, the graphic design, but at least it's convenient. And by the way, people move around in electric wheelchairs, move around on their own. Downstairs there's a metro station, and here is a bus roundabout. A local policeman encouraging people not to steal from the stores. Think before you steal something, don't commit a crime. Things will get ugly. Don't commit a crime. I decided to look for cycling infrastructure in the city, but the only thing I found was a bike graveyard. A bike parking. This parking lot is next to the metro, and it seems like many of these bikes are abandoned. There is one, for example. It's clearly abandoned. The saddle is rusty, the tire is flat. Some trash, some cigarette butts, abandoned bicycles, an abandoned scooter. Everything is old and rusty. Another abandoned bicycle, more abandoned bicycles. Here, everything is already rusty. Looking at all these bikes, it looks like a garbage dump, honestly. After looking at these bikes, I have two questions. One, why they aren't disposed of properly? Obviously no one needs them, they're just taking up space here. The second question is, what happened to their owners? Maybe something bad happened, because they obviously belong to workers who left them here in the morning, but did not return in the afternoon. Awful. I mean that, except for rental bikes, half of other bicycles are completely abandoned. The bike lane is done weirdly. At the local transportation department, they told me that by 2030, they plan to increase the length of bike lanes by 3 times. They also promised to build storage places for bikes and showers for cyclists, but not yet. Let's check out the metro then. Near the metro station, there is a whole system of roofs to protect mainly from rain, because during the rainy season, you can't really walk here. So you can walk pretty long staying under the roofs. They will lead to the station, the stop, or the house. You can walk like this to a taxi stop. You will always be protected from the rain. And at night, there's beautiful lighting here. In some places they are higher so the cars can pass, but pedestrians can continue walking covered. You can enter Singapore's metro simply with your bank card, kind of like in London or in Moscow. This is a sign saying that you cannot go on the escalator with a stroller, and they advise using the elevator. It looks very dramatic. Only blood drops on the tiles are missing. It is illegal to carry durians in the subway. What is interesting, for smoking the fine is $1,000. For various flammable liquids, $5,000. For food, if you eat or drink on the subway, $500. And carrying a durian is such a terrible crime that apparently, I don't know, you'll be shot for this. You can't buy your way out. By the way, Singapore officials are quite happy with their featureless metro. They say that the architecture of the stations is in line with the urban environment of the city. Apparently, they don't think that the architecture itself creates the environment. It is especially surprising because in Singapore, they can make an interesting object even from an old railway track. I'm currently on a railway bridge near the former Bukit Timah station. It is a very interesting object. There used to be a railway line that connected Singapore and Malaysia. They closed it, and in 2011 they opened a park along this railway line. Now people ride bikes, run, walk, and just spend good time in this park. In some places, they have preserved the rails. For example, here on the bridge in the middle, you can see the rails and the original bridge how it used to be. And in other places, the rails were covered. They were leveled. Now they are integrated into the path, so that they don't bother cyclists and pedestrians. Here are some gardeners taking pictures of each other. They must be doing it to report to their boss. This way, they confirm that the job is done. But they don't seem to be working, they are only posing. They've asphalted the railway track, and now we got this path. They didn't remove the railway itself, though. That's a good thing. By the way, landscaping here is very interesting. A lot of different plants, amazing butterflies, squirrels jumping around. Look what a trendy landscaping. There must be something about the story of this place. Let's check it out. I think the station itself is further away. Here is a map of Singapore and the railway that starts from the center of Singapore and goes to the border with Malaysia. How it used to work. 1900, 1903. This is the port, and this is the railway. Here is the train station, and well, that is the Bukit Timah railway station. This is what the station looked like when it was still active. And this is the bridge which I was crossing just now. There used to be a river down here. Now there is a road. In general, the development here is quite dense. And then they began building all this stuff. This must be the last train to Malaysia. It was driven by Sultan Ibrahim Ismail. Apparently, he was an important person. In 2011, they closed the railway and only left the tracks in some places. Here we will find the trendiest toilets. I never even doubted that. By the way, look at this fence. What is it made of? It was made of old railroad ties. They make a nice fence next to the toilet. These railroad ties must be 100 years old. They even put some flowers here, but they forgot to water them. So the flowers are dead now, but the toilet is clean and nice. Look at this bench. It is also made of railway elements. They made seat separators from real rails. And this is the station, by the way. It was opened after COVID. I mean, it is completely new, right after restoration. This is the station's building. It is historical. It was just recently restored. There are wooden benches here, some old maps of the railway network. This is the 1963 map, and you can see this line here. It was the only railway line that was going from the port to Malaysia. And then there's the jungle, and a long park that stretches for kilometers across Singapore. Singapore has always suffered from floods. It is situated in a very rainy region. When it rains here, it rains really hard. And Singapore, throughout its history, has been flooded regularly. Especially since the city is located at the sea level and has a lot of low areas. At high tide, when the moon is full, the water level can rise by several meters. If you look at old pictures of Singapore, both the main streets and remote areas were constantly flooded. These floods cost lives, destroyed infrastructure, and caused serious damage. The city has fought against these floods throughout its history, and we can say it has almost managed to defeat them. If you compare old pictures of the floods to the current ones, you'll see that it's almost impossible to see the same level of water now. If the floods occur after a very heavy rain, they don't last long. A street can stay flooded for a couple of hours, but not longer. That's because of the unique engineering solutions and drainage system. They've built a whole network of canals to divert water during rains. One of these canals is right behind me. Just look at the scale of this thing. It is a gigantic canal that links the rivers. And the water accumulates here in this canal. You see, there are ditches everywhere and water is flowing through them. Water from all these ditches goes into the canal. What is interesting is that the water not only goes to the sea, it gets purified. And then it can be used by people. Here you can see how the system is organized. Here is a small canal. It recently rained and there is almost no water left. All the water eventually goes here, to this big system, which, as you can see, is capable of holding huge volumes of rainwater. Some interesting facts about the construction of these canals. So you can imagine that it's a very complex system, and when they started building it in the second half of the last century, the city was already full of roads and buildings. So imagine, in a city so densely populated with a lot of infrastructure already built, you have not only to install some pipes, but to build a whole system of canals that would connect rivers and accumulate water in all the districts in the city. I mean, it was really a hard task to do. And even though the canal is on the surface here, most of it is hidden underground. Only here you can see it from the ground. Most of these giant pipes are under the ground, like metro tunnels. Water goes through them to the plants, where it is purified and put to good use. Let's look at other facilities made for ordinary Singaporeans who do not live in elite neighborhoods or buy cars with double taxation. Let's see where the not-so-rich Singaporeans live. Most Singaporeans live in HDB houses. HDB stands for the Housing and Development Board of the Ministry of National Development of the Government of Singapore. It is public housing that they started building in the 60s to get rid of slums in Singapore. In general, most of their projects are pretty simple, or I would even say boring, not architecturally interesting at all, with just a few exceptions. Because right now I am on the 50th floor of the most luxurious HDB building in Singapore. They have built several 50-story towers here. I think it's the largest residential building in Asia by the number of apartments. No one has ever built anything like this. There is a garden on the rooftop and another garden on the middle floor. So right now, I'm on the 50th floor. By the way, you can come up here even if you don't live in this building. You can buy a ticket that costs $6, and you go to the rooftop, and this building doesn't look like public housing at all. It's very unusual. They built it 13 years ago, but it still looks modern today. It blends in with the rest of the skyscrapers in the downtown Singapore. This project has received several awards for its architecture. It was praised by many magazines. Singapore has shown that even public housing can be stylish. Of course, in terms of the standards that I personally promote, there is nothing good here. It's basically a huge anthill, and it might be fun to come here once, walk on the roof, enjoy the view of the harbor and downtown Singapore, but I personally wouldn't like to live here because it's very crowded. This elevator with endless floors, these people going around with packaged soup, because clearly it is not the richest people living here. Anyway, in the photos it looks nice. They've got their architecture awards for it, but in reality it is nothing more than a human anthill. In fact, From below, it is impossible to estimate the scale of this monster, because the building has 50 floors, guys. It's huge. It can be seen from almost everywhere in Singapore, and I can say I like it. Okay, the guys won some prizes for its architecture. Perhaps for 2005, when it was designed, it really was something unique and interesting. But today, there are tons of anthills like this one around the world. And it seems to me that people shouldn't live in such anthills. On the other hand, in Singapore, there is not enough space, so it can be justified. I can see why projects like this one exist here, because they just don't have enough land. But when you build something like this in Russia, for example, nothing justifies it. I am in an ordinary residential district of Singapore, surrounded by high-rise buildings. All courtyards are for pedestrians only. There are no cars, only underground parkings. I saw some parking lots over there, but most of them are underground. Sometimes there are parking lots for guests near the houses, but they are between the houses, not in the courtyard. They are completely car-free. And now let's check what playgrounds they have here. I just can't make videos without reviewing cities' residential districts and playgrounds that I love so much. They have pretty good zoning here. There are areas for older children with equipment like this. In terms of design, the equipment might be a bit too colorful and not as elegant as somewhere in Europe. But in terms of functionality and different options for playing, it's not bad here. There are some towers, some bridges. Wow, it's a trampoline. It's a trampoline. Cool. It's great, guys. They have trampolines here. Then right here we've got a sports ground, and over there there's a large basketball court. I must clarify that I've come here in the middle of a working day, so there are fewer children. Now the children are in schools and daycares, because it is forbidden to film children. In order not to offend anyone, I had to choose a time when there are no children here. At night, there is more people here, obviously. It's a skating area. This is a playground for babies. There are some Chinese elderly under a canopy. They are listening to a lecture or something. Maybe they are going to do exercises now, or sing songs, I don't know. Look at the way parking is organized here. It's above the ground here. Yes, there are underground parkings and above ground parkings here. But I wonder, what's there on the roof? Because I can see something green. Maybe it's a green space. Let me try to get up there. Do you think they have an elevator here? There is no elevator, but there is a sign that says that you can't take pictures or film here. Well, maybe you can't film because there is a playground nearby and they worry for the children. But I wasn't filming children anyway. Here we are. Landscaping on the roof. Great. It's like a continuation of the courtyard. There are a lot of plants here, a small playground for children. Quite a primitive one, nothing special. It is not something to be proud of. Courtyard without cars and these horrible houses, look at them. High-rise buildings, as they like them in Asia. Actually, you can get on the roof of this parking lot, directly from the apartment building. Several parkings are connected, and there are green areas on their roofs. And this is the yard we were inspecting just now. Crazy. A food delivery man may have been kidnapped here. Oh my god, look at this. By the way, keep in mind that this bag is for halal food only. And there are many Muslims in Singapore, and some restaurants only make halal food, so naturally there are separate delivery services too. There is a special delivery service for halal food. They have their own bags, where no other food can go. And in the food courts too, there are areas with trays for halal food only. There you can leave dirty plates of halal dishes only. For other dishes, there is a different area. Here is a very interesting area. I will film it carefully to maintain privacy. This is the water area, with different fountains, showers. I imagine how cool it must be for kids to play here when it's hot. Really, it's like a magical place. There's also a sandy area here, like a large box of sand. Judging by the pits, the kids like digging things here. So that was a typical courtyard in a residential area in Singapore. It's not the worst neighborhood, but it's not the best either, because in better residential complexes you won't be able to just walk around like this. They have security guards and fences, so you can't enter there without permission. And the level of services and everything else is certainly higher there. This area here would be an average middle-class neighborhood. Singapore is a multi-ethnic society. Since the state is quite new, there is no such ethnicity as Singaporeans yet. 3/4 of Singapore's population are of Chinese ethnicity, Malays are 13%, and Indians are 9%. All these groups are also divided into smaller ethnicities. Among the Indians, for example, the Tamils dominate, and the Chinese are represented by more than 10 ethnic groups. A lot of migrants are coming to Singapore today, and now 30% of the country's population are non-residents. At the same time, the authorities don't try to forcefully mix all the ethnicities into one. Singapore's ethnic neighborhoods are its special feature. For example, now I am in a Muslim neighborhood. Once there were many Arab merchants based here, and now the core of the Muslim populations of Singapore is made up of Malays. Of course, the main thing in the Muslim district is the bazaar. What do they sell in the Muslim neighborhood? Traditional clothing? Dresses? Pretty dresses, a lot of pretty dresses. Carpets, of course, you can't without a carpet. Sweets. As you can see, it's very clean in Singapore, even in the bazaar. And here they are, the backyards of Singapore. Tanks, air conditioners. These are the backyards of numerous shops and restaurants of the Muslim district in the city. Look, someone threw away a lamp. Someone else threw away a sink. More garbage here. There are pigeons flying around, but overall it's relatively clean. I mean, not bad for a backyard. It could be much worse. And to make it less depressing, the walls have been painted by artists. It's street art. I don't think it's particularly valuable, but it's still interesting. An important warning once again, this building is monitored by security cameras. If you see something, you should call the police, 999. What an interesting choice of the picture. An old photo camera instead of surveillance camera. That's an interesting angle. Dome of Singapore's main mosque next to these slum-type houses. Muscat Street was named after the capital of Oman in 1909. It was rebuilt by joint efforts of Singapore and Oman in 2012. Surprising Singapore toponymy. Baghdad Street, named after the city of Baghdad. And next to it, there should be Kabul Street, since they're naming all streets after capitals. Oh no, this is Kandahar Street. We can see traditional two-story Singaporean houses. There were shops on the ground floor, and people lived on the first floor. Well, basically like today. The houses are in very good condition, by the way. Victorian style. Here, thanks to the canopies, you can hide from the heat. It's nice to walk here. Since I arrived in Singapore in the holy month of Ramadan, I decided to return to the Muslim neighborhood at night. It's a festive period, and all the shops are closed. But people are eating. They've managed to find food somewhere. Nightlife in Singapore. They're selling something tasty here.
Hai, selamat hari raya. About $20. The carpet is only at $20. 2 meter by 3 meter. Lelok, jomblo. I cannot talk English, my English lelok feeling well, bang.
And I'm going to continue exploring ethnicities of Singapore. My friends, we are in the Indian neighborhood. As I said, the Indians represent about 9% of the city's population, the majority of Tamils coming from the southern states of India. In fact, in the past, Indian culture greatly influenced native people of this place, the Malays. But it was not until British colonization when a lot of Indians came to live here. Among the current Indian population, there are many migrant workers and non-residents. Naturally, these people have brought their religion here too. For example, this brightly colored temple is dedicated to many armed warrior, goddess Kali. Also, the Indian neighborhood is a bit dirty, which is unusual for Singapore. We all know that Singapore is the cleanest city in the world, and there are huge fines for littering in the streets. But in the Indian neighborhood, we'll see a lot of garbage. Well, not at every corner, but we'll see a lot of it. Obviously, people here are not fined for littering. So what do we have in the Indian neighborhood? Beautiful Indian women selling flowers, Indian jewelry everywhere. Everyone is dressed up. People are choosing gold jewelry. Everything looks very expensive and luxurious. By the way, gold is sold in jewelries and also in bulk. You can also sell your own gold jewelry here. This looks amazing. People line up to buy a gold ring or a gold watch. 400 grams. This one, before discount, about 42,000 Singapore dollars. 42,000 Singapore dollars. There are rings to suit all tastes. Of course, the most popular ones are those with letters, Rolex logo, football clubs, Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea and the dollar sign. The things that bring success. Talking about trash, I won't say there's a total mess here, but there are empty bottles and cans everywhere here. I mean, it's nothing like the perfectly clean city center. Look, someone ate outside and threw away the pack right here. Prices for SIM cards. If you buy a SIM card at the airport, you will pay 50 Singapore dollars for 100 gigabytes. In the city, you can buy a similar plan twice as cheap. The conditions here are also better, more gigabytes and more minutes. So you better get to the city and go to a phone store to save some money. Here's an announcement for locals. You can send money to Malaysia or India. They seem to be sending money to India for their children and to Malaysia for the parents. While the Indians and the Malays are minorities in Singapore, the main ethnicity here is a different one. The majority of Singapore's population are Chinese, as you will see them everywhere around the city, but they also have their own district. And they build traditional Chinese houses here. For example, in 2007, the Buddha Tooth Relic Temple was built here based on the style of the Tang Dynasty, which ruled from the 7th to 10th centuries AD. But the Chinese population of Chinatown not only preserves temples, but also the traditional Chinese mafia. Members of the Chinese secret societies, Hoi Dangs, came here with Chinese workers. It was from the secret societies that the mafia emerged. The Triads, as the Chinese mafia is called, were favorable to the British administration. They would control large groups of workers, and the authorities could resolve issues with workers through the Triads. they were not fought against until the second half of the 20th century, and even then, the fight was not exactly successful. In the late 1990s, there were mafia wars in Singapore. However, the secret society branch of the police force managed to put an end to them. Now, there are almost no triads left in Singapore, only former members of disbanded gangs and groups of young people who imitate old triads. But of course, they don't have that much power. This time, I didn't have time to walk through Chinatown, but I did have time to do something a little tastiest: go to a local food court. I am in Chinatown, and I've arrived at a local food court. There are a lot of small restaurants with Chinese food here. You can get rice, noodles, chicken, pork, all Chinese and authentic. But the interesting thing is that if we open the Michelin guide now, you probably heard of it, right? They evaluate the best restaurants in the world. So I opened their website, and you can see that this little patch in the mall has 6 restaurants mentioned in the guide. Before, some restaurants here even had a Michelin stars. And if I'm not mistaken, it was the first time when a food court restaurant, basically just a stall with street food, got a Michelin star. It made headlines then. A local noodle store got a Michelin star. And now there are 6 restaurants mentioned in the Michelin guide here. Now, there are no starred restaurants here. The last star was taken away a few years ago. They didn't stand the test of fame. But nevertheless, there are 6 restaurants marked by Michelin in this food court. Most of them have a Bib Gourmand symbol, the one with the Michelin guy. That means good food for a reasonable price. So now I'm going to see what they have here. Delicious and for reasonable money. In fact, there are a lot of different corners here. People sit in the heat under fans. All the food looks really tasty. They put newspaper articles about their food on display. They're cooking some duck here. In general, the food court looks very authentic. A true Chinatown. It is dirty, colorful, full of food stalls and advertisements. Everyone is praising their place. And most importantly, it's cheap. Michelin Guide's duck with noodles costs only 4 Singapore dollars. About 3 American dollars by the current exchange rate. All the restaurants here look more or less like this. They all brag about their prices, newspaper mentions, photos with famous people who stopped to grab a bite here. Talking about prices, a cup of fresh watermelon juice costs 2 Singapore dollars. Well, my friends, I hope you are impressed by the contrasts of Singapore. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a like, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Share this video on Reddit and send the link to your friends on WhatsApp.